Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for new international students coming to the University of Cincinnati for fall 2022. My name is Ron Cushing. I am the Director of UC International Services, and I will be the host of this webinar. During the webinar, we're going to cover many critical things that are related to your arrival and enrollment at the University of Cincinnati for fall semester. We're going to cover all the arrival things that you need to do with our office and some other university offices on campus. We are going to cover the enrollment requirement you need to be aware of as you're selecting your classes for the fall. And we are going to be covering a lot of the travel rules and vaccination policies that are in place for coming to the United States and coming to the University of Cincinnati. Now, this webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on our website, likely by the end of the week on Friday. So you don't have to try to take copious notes. It will be posted and available for viewing and listening later. Everybody's microphone should be muted. If you have a question, use the chat function to post it, and my staff will be monitoring those questions and trying to answer them as we go. At the end of my presentation, any questions that haven't been answered yet in the chat, we will verbally answer those questions for you before we conclude. So that's how this presentation is going to go. And so let's go ahead and get started with the webinar here. So the first thing you need to be aware of is that there are current visa and travel restrictions out there. So if you've been admitted, most of you have to go to a US consulate or embassy and get a visa stamp to get here. Many embassies and consulates are still not working at full capacity, which means you're probably a little bit anxious about your ability to get a visa appointment. And so hopefully that will happen. You need to check with the website of the consulate or embassy you intend to apply to for more details on availability. You need to specifically check their protocols for requesting emergency visa appointments if you are not able to get a visa appointment and arrive in the US by August 22nd, which is the start of classes here at UC. If necessary, our office can provide you with a letter supporting an emergency visa appointment that you can apply or you can provide to the consulate or embassy. But every consulate and embassy is different in terms of their emergency visa appointment protocols. And unfortunately, we can't intervene on your behalf. You have to make the contact. But if you need to make an emergency visa appointment, every consulate or embassy should have a protocol for that. And if you need a letter from us, contact us and we can certainly provide that. Now, everybody needs to be aware that classes begin on August 22nd, 2022. And if you're coming on an F1 or a J1 visa, you're going to be allowed to arrive up to 30 days before the start date that is indicated on your I-20 form or your DS 2019. If you're on another status, when you enter the US is going to be completely up to you. But F1 and J1 students, you can only enter up to 30 days in advance of the start date on your document. Now, if you are going to be living in UC housing, you should not try to come 30 days in advance unless you have other arrangements on places to stay. Housing opens officially on August 13th and 14th. So that's Saturday and Sunday. And there are no additional charges if you arrive on those dates. But if you arrive on the 13th or 14th, you do have to complete what's called an early arrival form. If you need to arrive earlier, we can accommodate you arriving as early as August 10th, but between the 10th, 11th, and 12th, there will be an additional nightly charge of $40, and our dining halls will not be open until the 13th. So if you're going to be living in university housing you need to try to plan your arrival for the 13th or 14th. Students not residing in UC housing, you can certainly arrive earlier, and we encourage you to arrive as early as possible so you can get all the things done you need to get done before classes begin on August 22nd. Now, as I indicated, if you are living in housing, they have an early arrival form that you have to link to. And so you may want to jot down this link if you haven't already completed it and submit it to the housing office if you are going to arrive on August 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, or 14th. If you're arriving from the 15th or after, you do not have to complete the early arrival form. All students, regardless of where you're going to be living, need to download the UC COVID Check app on the UC website, because even though there are some things that have now changed that we'll cover in a minute due to COVID, students still need the COVID Check app, and you need to report things like your health updates once you get here if you start experiencing symptoms of COVID. Now, everybody needs to understand what you're going to need to do upon arrival. And I want to start with undergraduate students who are going to be arriving. So undergraduate orientation is called Bearcat Bound Orientation, BBO. And for most international students, that's going to take place on either August 15th, 16th, or 17th. Again, you're going to arrive, hopefully, on the 13th or 14th, and then you will be slotted for BBO on the 15th, 16th, or 17th. If you are already in the US, you can take advantage of BBO during the summer, and hopefully you are going to do that. We encourage you to do that if you are here. And this would include anybody who holds a status other than F1 or J1 who's already here, or if you have F1 or J1 status, and you're transferring to us from another US institution. Take advantage of the opportunity to go through BBO before August. But most of you will likely be going through BBO on the 15th, 16th, or 17th. Our office, UC International, will hold a welcome event for all students from 1 to 3 p.m. on August 18th. We have an online virtual session for all students on August 19th from 8:30 to 10:30. These are optional programs run by our office. It's not mandatory that you attend, but we certainly encourage you to, as it will give you opportunities to learn more about the university, meet other students, make some friends. On August 21st, we will have a soccer and snow cones event from 11 to 2 p.m. We encourage you to come to that. And all week, that week, arrival week, the university itself will be sponsoring many welcome activities. And we encourage you to look at the Welcome Week activities website, and we encourage you to come to as many events as possible before classes begin. But let me be clear that all students must arrive and complete orientation and all the other necessary steps and complete our pre-arrival checklist by August 22nd. Now, graduate students, most graduate students will have a departmental orientation, and that will be communicated to you by your admitting department. We have hundreds of graduate departments, and we can't keep track of who's having an orientation when. Your admitting department will communicate that to you. Make sure that you attend that when it is available. Now, you can take part in a welcome event for graduate students run by our office from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. On August 17th. And then you can also join our welcome event on August 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. And our online virtual session from 8:30 to 10:30 on August 19th. If any of you are getting graduate assistantships, we will be holding what's called onboarding on August 19th. August 19th is the date that anybody who has an already assigned assistantship needs to get their work authorization approved by our office. So onboarding is our office completing the mandatory paperwork that's necessary to hire any employee. And so you will be scheduled for a specific time as you complete our pre-arrival checklist under the mandatory personal information section. And we'll cover that in a minute. You will indicate if you have an assistantship, and only indicate you have an assistantship if you have one. If you're hoping to get one, don't say you have one, but you will be scheduled for onboarding on the 19th once you complete that part of our checklist. And again, all students are supposed to arrive and complete orientations and our checklist by August 22nd. Now, you need to be aware of some insurance issues. Most international students enroll in the UC Student Health Insurance Plan, and that takes effect August 10th. So our plan is mandatory of all students. You can request a waiver if you have insurance that meets all the requirements, but very few international students are able to get policies that meet our waiver requirement. And so you should plan on having our UC Student Health Insurance Plan. And again, that takes effect on August 10th. If you arrive in the US before August 10th, you will want to make sure that you have some type of international traveler's insurance that will cover you in case of an accident or illness. Healthcare in the US is very expensive. You get sick or get hurt before the student health insurance policy kicks in, you could have multiple thousands of dollars in bills to pay. Make sure if you arrive before August 10th that you have insurance that will cover you. It is your responsibility to make sure that you obtain insurance that covers you during that time period. So please make sure you do that. Now, one of the things we want to cover is what the enrollment requirement is for new students. And so any new student, and even after you arrive, current students, this fall, starting this fall again, everything is back to normal operations from COVID requirements. Now, that means as an international student, if you are on a F1 or J1 visa, you have to be enrolled full-time and in person. Full-time for undergraduates means at least 12 credit hours, and full-time for graduate students means at least 10 credit hours, and your enrollment must be deemed to be in person. Let me explain what that means. Students can only use 3 credit hours of online courses to reach full-time enrollment. Once the full-time enrollment threshold has been met, you can take additional online courses. So as an example, if you're enrolled for 9 credit hours of in-person courses, you can take 6 credit hours of online courses. That would be permitted. But it's important that you understand what courses at UC are considered in-person versus online, and that you're enrolled full-time with only 3 credit hours of online courses being used to reach that full-time requirement. Now, in the UC student system, which is called Catalyst, courses will be designated with a specific instructional code. P means that the course is fully in person. DL means that it is fully online. But then there are 2 other designations you need to carefully understand. PD means partially distance learning, and MD means mostly distance learning. The P and the PD classes are considered in person. The DL and the MD classes are considered online. So make sure when you're scheduling for your classes, you look at those designations clearly and you register for the appropriate amount of in-person versus online credits. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the university, our Department of Homeland Security, and other parts of the US federal government have all made modifications to arrival and enrollment requirements. And it's critical that you understand what to expect to be able to enter the US and what you will have to do after you arrive in the US under certain circumstances. First thing is, you must be fully vaccinated for COVID-19 by an approved FDA or authorized WHO emergency list vaccine. And you must have received all the necessary doses at least 2 weeks before you plan to enter the US. If you recently recovered from COVID-19, instead of having the vaccination, you could travel with documentation of recovery. And that would include your positive COVID-19 test. And you'll have to agree to get vaccinated upon arrival. Now, effective last June, it was about a month ago, the good news is you no longer have to get a COVID-19 test within 24 hours of your scheduled flight. Up until June 12th, in addition to being vaccinated, you had to have a negative COVID test to join your flight. That is no longer a requirement, so you need to keep that in mind. Now, you need to understand what the approved vaccines are, and it's Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, Janssen or Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Covaxin, Covishield, Sinovac, and Sinopharm. So those are the approved FDA or WHO emergency vaccines, and you have to be fully vaccinated by one of them. And you must carry proof of vaccination with you. So your vaccination certificate, you can have either a paper version or have it on your smartphone, a printout of your COVID-19 vaccination record, or those types of things, digital photos of your vaccination card. All of those things are possible, but you need to make sure that it indicates several things. First, your personal identifiers, your name, passport number, country of birth, that matches everything on your travel documents. The name of the official source issuing the record. Is it a public health agency, a government agency, or other authorized vaccine provider? And it needs to indicate what vaccine manufacturer you used and what your dates of vaccination were. Again, you have to prove you are fully vaccinated by one of the approved vaccines in order to travel. Now, there are limited exemptions to the vaccination requirement, and those of you who qualify for that have to understand what you need to do. But first is, if you are a citizen of a country where the COVID-19 vaccine is only available in limited quantities, meaning less than 10% of the total population has been vaccinated, you could receive an exemption from the vaccination requirement. Students under the age of 18, and we will likely have a couple of those, can be exempted. And students with medical conditions that prevent them from getting the vaccine can be exempted. Now, you need to know if you're from one of the countries that fall within the 10% of the population requirement. And these continue to shrink, and they change every day. Make sure you're checking the link provided to make sure that you are on that list if you're planning on trying to come without being vaccinated. But if your country's not on this list, that means you better be vaccinated or you better have a medical exemption for it. Now, if you are granted entry with an exemption, you have to get tested for COVID-19 within 3 to 5 days of your arrival, unless you show that you have had COVID in the last 90 days. This part is very critical. It means you must quarantine for a full 7 days upon your arrival. And even if the test that you take in 3 to 5 days comes back negative, you have to finish the full 7 days of quarantine. And so you got to make sure that you do that. And you will have to agree to get vaccinated for COVID-19 within 60 days of arriving in the US. And the good news is you will be able to get vaccinated here on campus. We still continue to offer ways for our students to get vaccinated for COVID-19 here on campus. But you need to understand if you qualify for those exemptions, and you need to know what it means upon arrival if you're going to be entering using one of those exemptions. Now, for those who are going to be using the exemption, this is very, very critical. It's extremely important. If you will be entering the US without being fully vaccinated, you must send me directly your details. So I need your full name, your UCM number, your date of birth, the date you will arrive in Cincinnati, what your residential address in Cincinnati will be, and your email and US phone number. My email you can find on our website, but I'll give it to you here. It is cushinrb@ucmail.uc.edu. If you email it to our general account, that will also be forwarded to me too. But the important thing is, if you are going to be coming using one of the vaccination exemptions, you need to email me those details before your arrival. And if you know when you're arriving, send me those things now. Our health services has to prepare for who's entering under the exemption so we can assist you with getting quarantine taken care of and getting the vaccinations taken care of and following up with you upon arrival. The University of Cincinnati requires vaccination of all of our enrolled students unless you meet one of the exemptions, and you're required to submit proof of your vaccination no later than 1 week prior to the first day of classes. And you have to do this using the UC COVID Check app. So make sure that you download that app and make sure that you provide your proof of vaccination to it as soon as you can. And you can always check the UC Public Health website for additional details regarding the university's COVID-19 vaccine requirement, as well as ability to get the vaccine upon arrival. So those are some of the critical arrival details that you need to be aware of, and from travel, on down into what your registration requirements will be. Now I want to talk a little bit about the iBearcats global system itself. So that's our offices, UC International offices system, and how you are going to use it and what you have to do with us. Unfortunately, as a new student, you do have to do multiple things with multiple offices. You got to do things in your Catalyst account. You got to do some things with health services, and you got to do many things with our iBearcats global system. Now, once you received an acceptance to UC, you were sent an email from us on how to use our iBearcats global system. And it's through that system that you'll do everything from obtain your I-20 or DS 2019 to telling us that your visa has been approved, to completing your health screening requirement and telling us that you've read all the regulations. And so I'm going to cover all of that here in just a minute. But go back to your admit letter from our office system. It will look like something that is on your screen. It will tell you you have to use our pre-arrival checklist, and it will give you your M number and your PIN number for our system. And it tells you where to go, the link you have to go to, and how you need to log in. I first want to talk about what you have to do to log in properly, because a lot of students have been struggling with logging in properly. So the first thing, though, is you need to know that all new students, regardless of your immigration status, have to complete our pre-arrival checklist fully before classes begin. And you will need your M number and your PIN number to do that. This is a process that takes multiple steps over multiple time periods. Initially, you'll only be able to do some things. Say, you've activated your UC email and get your I-20. You won't be able to do some things until later on after you've got your visa stamp, and you won't be able to fully finish the checklist until you actually arrive in the US. And so I'm going to explain all of that to you now. Now, want to make sure everyone is clear about how to properly log into our system. A lot of students seem to be struggling with this. There are two login links, one for current students, faculty, and staff, and one for new students. Under no circumstance should you be using the login box under current students, faculty, or staff. You need to be using the link that says New Student Scholar Login under the heading Don't Have a UC Network ID. It's that login that gets you access to the pre-arrival checklist. And even after you've activated your UC email, and you do have a network ID, for example, you still need to be using the New Student Scholar Login to access the pre-arrival checklist. So think of it this way. Until you've actually shown up in the US on campus and are physically in classes, you are trying to arrive and get here. You use the New Student Scholar Login for that. Once you've completed the pre-arrival checklist and classes have begun, after that, you use the login button under current students. But everything you need to do on the checklist, you always need to use that New Student Scholar Login button to access the checklist. And again, when you access it, it's going to ask you for your university number and your PIN number, and click the login. If you forget your PIN number and can't find the email, you can ask that the PIN number be sent to you again. Now, the pre-arrival checklist has 7 sections on it, and you should complete the sections in order, and certain sections won't be available until you have entered the US. If you have received your US visa, but have yet to enter the country, you should have already completed the following parts of our checklist. And if you haven't done this, today, when this webinar is over, please do so. You must have completed the Welcome to UC, the Get Your UC I-20 or DS 2019, the Plan Your Arrival, the Review and Registered for Required Events, and most of the immigration review sections. You won't be able to fully complete the immigration review section until you enter the US and can download your I-94 card. In short, you have to understand that completing the pre-arrival checklist will happen over time as you get your visa, as you enter the US, as you find an apartment. You won't be able to go in all at once and complete it all at once. And so make sure that you are completing the steps as they become available to you. Many students, once they get the I-20 form, stop completing the form. Yes, you need the I-20 to get your visa stamp, but there are other sections that you need to complete now. And then when you enter finish. Make sure that you follow the instructions. Now, when you open the checklist, this is what it's going to look like. And when you click the plus button to the right of any section, it's going to open up what you have to do for that section. Some sections are very simple to fill out. You will simply just need to check a box that says, I've done this, or I don't need to do this. Other sections are going to require you to upload documents, answer questions, and it's important you understand how to do that properly. So we're going to go over that. But the first section is the welcome section. And probably everybody on this line or on this webinar has at least done this section. But it is at the welcome section that you are given links for confirming your admission, and you must confirm your admission, and how to activate your UC email and credentials. So follow the instructions and click the submit button when you have done that. Now, this is an example of what the system will look like when you click the plus section. Again, what you need to do is going to be there, and you click the hyperlink, and as you finish it, it will show up with a check mark where it says required. But the welcome section is the first section. Make sure you follow the instructions for getting your email activated. Now, the next section is your I-20 or DS 2019 section. And even if you're not going to get an I-20 or a DS 2019, you're an H-4 visa holder, for example, you still need to complete this section. You will be able to tell us that you don't need to get an I-20 or a DS 2019 in order to come to the US. You're going to be asked a series of questions. You must answer yes or no to all of them and make sure that you answer them correctly, but only answer yes to one of the yes/no questions. And based on your answers, different questions will then pop up and ask you to upload certain things. If you need to get an F1 or J1 visa, your sources of support will be required to be uploaded, and there will be links at the bottom of it for things like our financial certification form. Now, once your I-20 or DS 2019 is issued, you will be sent that to us via email with instructions on how to pay the SEVIS fee. Once you've paid the SEVIS fee, you need to go back to our checklist and indicate that you have paid the fee. For some reason, a lot of students, once they get the I-20 form, again, they stop filling out the checklist. Make sure that you go back and complete it, including indicating that you've completed the SEVIS fee. So this is an example of what step 2 would look like. And as you see, there's 2 parts to it. First, you have to submit the sources of support and get that approved. And then the pay the SEVIS fee will open up. You'll see that there's a little lock by that. It's not yet available because it's not available until you complete the sources of support section. Once you do that, then a blank box will show up for that, and you have to indicate that you've paid the SEVIS fee, and that will close that section. Now, ultimately, what everybody is going to be after if you need an F1 or a J1 student visa is the I-20 or DS 2019 form. And if you've yet to get one of those, I think most people on this call probably have them already. But for those who don't, let's briefly talk about what you need to do to get that done. The first thing is you're going to have to supply us with proof of financial support for your program of study. And the links on the form will tell you how much you need to supply if you're an undergraduate student or a graduate student, or in some cases, some programs will even have higher fees than that. You're going to complete our financial certification form, including the part for your sponsor, telling us how much they're going to grant you, if they are going to be supplying support to you. And they must attach their proof of support to that documentation. Now, it is critical that when they do this, that you upload all of the documents together as one PDF on the Sources of Support eForm. And you'll select the file and upload it all. Again, make sure you put them all into one PDF. And once we issue the I-20 form, then you need to remember to check I have paid the SEVIS fee and submit that. That then brings you to your plan your arrival section. And if you have completed the Get Your I-20 or DS 2019 section, you should have also completed this section by now. All right, it is here that you tell us that you have either applied for on-campus housing or you don't plan on applying for housing. Now, at this late point in the summer, housing is already closed and we are at full capacity. So if you haven't done that yet and you were hoping to, unfortunately, you will not be able to apply for on-campus housing at this late date. But that doesn't mean you don't fill out this section of the pre-arrival checklist. Make sure that you check that you do not need on-campus housing or you're not eligible for it, and make sure that you fill that section out. And again, if you've been issued your I-20 or you're studying on a status that is not F1 or J1, this is a section you should have already completed, as is the register or review and register for required events section. That's something you should have already completed by now. Make sure that you answer the questions correctly, because based on whether you're a graduate student, undergraduate, or exchange student, different questions will come up. But make sure you have filled this out already. Now, the next section of our checklist is the immigration review section. And students who are currently in the US who will be studying on their current immigration status, your H4, L2, DACA, something else, you should have completed this section already. And if you haven't, please do so. If you are an F1 transfer student and you are already in the US and plan to remain in the US until classes start, you should complete this section fully now. All students coming to the US for the first time will need to wait until their F1 or J1 visa stamp has been approved to start completing this section. And you won't be able to fully complete this section until you enter the US. But it is very critical that you complete and upload your passport and visa stamp once your visa has been issued. This helps us understand who of our students have already gotten their visa, so we can plan that you are likely going to be coming. So please make sure, if you've already gotten your visa stamp, that you have at least completed the passport and visa upload section. Now, when you get to that section, you're going to have to answer questions about your visa stamp, you know, the number, when it expires, all those kinds of things, and upload the visa stamp. You'll be asked to select the file and upload it, and it'll repeat that process for your visa stamp. You will not upload them together. They will be uploaded separately. So again, make sure that if your visa has already been issued, that you've completed this portion of the checklist. Next, under immigration review, is what we call mandatory personal information. And do not attempt to complete this section until you are sure where you will be staying upon arrival in Cincinnati. You must know the street address, the state, and the zip code, as well as the apartment number. So those of you who are going to be staying in university housing, you haven't been communicated yet what dorm you're going to be in or what that room number will be. Wait until you know what the room number is before you do it. If you have a temporary address you're going to be in, you can certainly add that now. But once the permanent address is known, you have to finish this part of the checklist And you must also go to your Catalyst system and complete the mailing address with your Cincinnati address. It's the permanent address field in Catalyst that you should be adding for your overseas address. And it's the mailing address for your Cincinnati address. And make sure whatever you put into our system, you are putting it into Catalyst the exact same way. You're going to be asked to give us an emergency contact when you're filling this out too. But please make sure you update your address in both our iBearcats global system and the Catalyst system. Many students forget to update their address in both places. Unfortunately, you do have to update it in both places. Now, when you're filling it out, the instructions will give you guidance on how you are supposed to write a U.S. address. How we write our addresses here in the U.S. is very different than how many countries write their address. You have to start with the street number, and then the street name, and then your apartment number, then the city, state, and zip code. Make sure that you are filling that out completely and properly. And again, that you're putting the exact same data in both our system and Catalyst. If you don't have a US phone number, you can certainly put our office phone number down if you would like. But it's very critical that when you fill this out, you follow the instructions given on how to properly write a US address. So please make sure that, that you follow those instructions. Now, we've already been getting many questions from students about airport transportation. And yes, we offer free airport transportation from the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport to campus. And how you sign up for that is on the mandatory personal information section of our pre-arrival checklist. As you're filling it out, at the bottom of the section, you'll see the airport transportation link, and you have to give a specific password to be able to make that reservation. And so make sure that you follow those instructions properly if you want a free ride from the airport to campus. Now, the final portion of immigration review is what's called the I-94 card record upload. Now, students must enter the US to be able to complete this part of the immigration review section. And so you're not going to be able to fill that out if you're still in your home country. But those of you who are here already on another immigration status, or you're an F1 transferring, please fill this section out now. But when you arrive in the US, within 24 to 48 hours of your arrival, you should be going to the I-94 card link that's listed here and downloading a copy of your I-94 card and uploading it in our system. When you are opening the I-94 card, make sure it says that you're F1 or J1 and that it is marked for DS, for duration of status. Sometimes they don't fill that information out correctly, but you won't be able to finish this section of the checklist until you physically enter the United States. And remember to do that 24 to 48 hours after your arrival. You're going to be asked to fill in data from the I-94 card, the number, where you arrived, what date you arrived, and then you'll be asked to upload the card in the system. The next part of our checklist is extremely important. All new students, regardless of their program of study or their immigration status, must complete a health screening at University Health Services upon arrival. Failure to complete the health screening will result in cancellation of your classes. Once you arrive, please make sure you call University Health Services to schedule your health screening, and then make sure you come back to the pre-arrival checklist and say you have called them and scheduled your appointment. Do not tell us you've scheduled the appointment unless you have actually called them and scheduled the appointment. But you have to do two different things. Call them and schedule it, and then come back to the checklist and say you have scheduled it. Then the final portion of our checklist is called resources and regulations. And this is where you're going to get links to our online orientation, our student handbook. You'll have the ability to connect with other incoming student groups. Many students forget to mark that they have done this. Our system requires you to go in and say, yes, I've looked at the online orientation and I've accessed the student handbook. Make sure that you check that. Make sure that when you arrive and upload the I-94 card, that you complete these final two sections, the schedule your health screening and the resources and regulations. Now, while you can't say you've done it until you complete the other sections, you can open it and you can certainly view the links now to the online orientation, so that once you arrive, all you have to do is go in and check, yes, I have done this. But this all is very critical. You're going to be asked to do a lot of things for multiple departments at the university, and the pre-arrival checklist is what you have to do with our office. And it's critical because we can't activate your legal F1 or J1 record until you have done this. And so make sure that once you arrive, again, within 24 to 48 hours of your arrival, that you go back to our checklist and you complete it. Now, everything we've talked about today is subject to change, whether it's by our government, UC, the state of Ohio. We will keep you updated if anything changes between now and your arrival. We'll send you direct emails. So make sure that you are monitoring your UC email regularly. A lot of new students struggle to remember to check your UC email. Once your UC email is activated, that is how every office at the university communicates with you, not your non-UC email. So make sure that you are doing that. Now, with that, I'm going to ask Sarah O'Connell, one of my staff members here, to unmute her mic. She and the staff have been going along diligently trying to monitor chat and answer questions. But if there is a group of questions that have yet to be answered, we're going to verbally go over those questions and try to answer them for you now. So Sarah, are you there?
I'm here now. Sorry, I couldn't unmute my mic for a second there.
Okay. All right.
So I've gathered some questions, and I think Kelly has too, since I've been furiously typing away.
Okay.
I would say one of the biggest concerns we have is late arrival concerns. You know, what happens if I can't arrive on time? What's the process for that? When do I need to let you know?
Well, the first thing is you need to let us know when you are 100% sure you are not going to make it in time. So we're getting lots of questions from students. I'm trying to get scheduled for an emergency visa appointment. Don't let us know then. Let us know once you're absolutely sure you can't get a visa appointment in time and arrive on time. Unfortunately, for some students, you're not going to be able to arrive late under any circumstance. Undergraduate students are not allowed to arrive late. Some graduate students won't be allowed to arrive late. Some programs might give some students at the graduate level some flexibility to arrive late, but certainly nobody will ever be able to arrive more than 1 week after classes begin. Classes are in person now, and you can't miss more than a week of classes and still successfully complete it. Graduate students have to communicate with their program first to find out if they will allow late arrival, and if so, up until what date not to exceed 1 week. Then you need to let our office know that that has been approved. And again, undergraduates, unfortunately, you have to be here by August 22nd, or what's going to happen is you're going to have to decide if you want to defer to a future term, or if by chance your program has online classes that you would like to take fall semester and try to come in person for spring. But a lot of students, you're going to ultimately end up having to defer to the spring semester if you can't get here in time.
Thanks, Ron. So another frequently asked question that we've covered in the chat, but would be good to go over. A lot of questions about how do I enroll and pay for health insurance, and how do I pay my tuition bill?
Okay, so first, how you enroll depends on when you get to attend orientation. And for undergrads, you know, there is an online portion of the orientation for meeting your college advisor and getting registered for classes that if you haven't had already, you'll likely have in the coming weeks. Once you enroll and register for classes, you'll then be able to view your bill. Graduate students, you need to contact your programs about that. Many programs will restrict enrollment until you arrive and attend their orientation, or it will happen at their departmental orientation. And only then will you be able to see and view your bill.
Great. And then could you go over, or maybe go back in the presentation to just briefly go over those enrollment requirements again, and how much can be online and how much can be in person? Okay.
So in order to be a valid F1 or J1 student, you have to be enrolled full-time. And full-time at the undergraduate level means 12 credit hours. Full-time at the graduate level means 10 credit hours. Now, let me get here. So, and you're not only do you have to be enrolled full-time, but your program must be deemed in person. To be deemed in person, that means you got to be enrolled for at least 12 credit hours if undergrad, 10 credit hours as a grad, with only 3 of those credit hours being in online courses. So if you're an undergraduate, 9 in person, 3 online. If you're a graduate student, 7 in person, 3 online. Once you've reached that full-time enrollment threshold with that breakdown, you can take as many other online classes as you want. So a student could be enrolled for 9 credit hours of in-person, 9 credit hours of online. A graduate student could be enrolled for 7 credit hours of in-person and 9 credit hours of online. Once you've reached the full-time enrollment threshold, it doesn't matter how many additional online classes you take. But to reach full-time enrollment and stay legal, you have to be full-time with only 3 of those credit hours being in online courses. That's the best I can explain it.
Great. Thank you, Ron. All right. Looking through the chat and double checking our frequently asked questions. We did have a lot of questions about if the COVID booster is required to enter the US.
The booster is not required.
Great. So students having questions about if we do need to defer, what should we do to start that process?
It depends on if you're an undergraduate or graduate student. Undergraduate students need to contact the International Admissions Office. Graduate students need to contact their admitting program directly.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. And then students asking, can I get required immunizations after arrival to campus? I believe this is mostly in reference to not the COVID vaccine, but the general immunizations.
The answer is yes. So part of your health screening requirement will be going over what immunizations you have and what you don't. And any that you are lacking will be given to you during your health screening.
Great. Let's see here. Kelly, do you have any that you think I'm missing in terms of frequently asked or ones in the chat that I may have missed? Assuming you can unmute.
Yeah, I think you covered most of the frequently asked questions. Great job monitoring the chat, by the way. You did an amazing job answering everything coming in. I see there are a couple of questions, and you did link to a website with some resources for this, but will they get help setting up a bank account once they arrive?
So nobody is going to one-on-one help you set up a bank account, but at each of the orientations and some of our welcome webinars, you will meet people from places like the bank and other places around campus who will explain to you where and how to go. The good news is, at least for banking, we do have a bank here on campus that you will be able to use, and they're used to dealing with international students who don't have things like social security cards and all of those kinds of things. We highly recommend that you use that bank as your bank, but you will meet those people and learn more about those topics at orientations and some of our welcome events. Make sure you come to those.
And then a question that's coming a couple times. Are we still going to be offering those SIM cards for students at our office?
Until they run out, yes.
So you can come to our office after arrival and just ask for it at the front desk.
Correct.
Let's see here. I think we may have it covered. Anything else on your end, Kelly?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Well, great. I appreciate everybody who attended this morning. Again, we will get this recorded and posted on our website in a couple of days. You know how to reach us at international.students@uc.edu if you have any questions. But again, the big thing I want you to leave here this morning knowing is go back to the pre-arrival checklist, make sure you've completed it as fully as you can now. And remember that once you enter the US, you need to go back and complete it fully immediately. And by immediately, we mean within 24 to 48 hours of your arrival. So we know that you're here and we can collect everything we need to activate your legal records. We know that, everything you're going through with, your colleges, departments, getting visas and airline tickets, and all that's a struggle, and we're asking you to do more things. But unfortunately, if you are going to be an international student, there are more things you need to do because of your immigration status, and make sure that you don't forget about doing our checklist. And so with that, I will ask Kelly, go ahead and stop record. And everybody, please have a good day.